Hello and welcome to Pac-12 After Dark. I am Erik Coleman, here joined by Coach Nick Aliotti. We are going to break down all the Pac-12 happenings from today. Week 5 in the Pac-12, Boise State. Washington State Cougars went to Boise State to battle the Broncos. Boise State came out on top. Washington State had a lot of opportunities. Coach, I know you watched the game. What were your thoughts and your reactions from the game?
Well, first of all, I'm very much pulling for Oregon State and Washington State. I wish them nothing but success moving forward because of what happened, and we all know that. But hopefully things are coming back on the men with Teresa Gould's hard work. But Washington State, Boise State's a good football team, first of all, a very good football team. And it's hard to play there on that blue turf, particularly, I don't know if they should let Boise State wear those uniforms that match the dang turf. I mean, they can really hide guys out there. But that being said, I thought John Mateer once again was outstanding. If it wasn't for the sacks, he would have rushed for close to 100 yards again, threw for 300 yards. But I really think, Erik, that the pick that they threw late in the second half when they were in the red zone was very costly and kind of gave Boise momentum, and it kind of changed a little bit from there.
Yeah, I agree with you, Coach. On that one drive alone, I think Mateer was 8 for 8 on the drive. And then they got down into the red zone and he threw a pick. It looked like it was a miscommunication between him and Kyle Williams. But unfortunately, that ended that drive. But when I watched that game, and if I'm Washington State, one, I'm very frustrated. And two, I'm optimistic because the coaching staff, I thought they did an excellent job of putting together a game plan. Offensively, they opened things up. They came out in that first drive. I had some nice plays to counter Boise State's defense, the speed up front. On the defensive side of the ball, Coach, I know you were probably just as frustrated as I was at how many missed tackles that there were from Washington State. And it seemed like they had the right defense dialed up. A lot of the time they had Ashton Jeanty stopped up in the backfield, but he was able to run through tackles. One of his touchdowns, I think he broke 5 tackles. And he was just outstanding. He really proved why he is the number 1 running back in the country and a Heisman front runner. But, for Washington State, I hate to see it. He reminds me, playing Ashton Jeanty remind me of back when we played UCLA and Maurice Jones-Drew was back there running the football. You would come up, you would give him your best shot. He would absorb it, back up, and just keep going. And he's built the same way Jeanty is, where he has strong legs, squats over 600 pounds. And, in order to get a guy like that down, you have to bring your feet, you have to grab claw, and it has to be a gang tackle. And unfortunately for Washington State, they missed a lot of those opportunities, which led to big plays for Boise State. And on the other side with Mateer, I thought Mateer played excellent as well. But there were a couple of throws that he missed. There were a couple of opportunities on some deep balls that was missed by Washington State. And I think Washington State has to find a way to make it not everything be about John Mateer. They have to figure out a way to establish a run game and to take some of the load off of Mateer's shoulders.
Yeah, you hit it on the nail on the head. Jeanty, a good back will make that happen. But there was still way too many, 4 or 5 guys missing tackles on a couple of those big runs. I mean, let's face it. There were times when Washington State looked really good at the line of scrimmage, bottled them up, got them down for 1 or 2 yards. But then there were a few other times where there were guys in the hole or guys right there to make the play to make it even a 4 or 5 yard game. And that one run that Jeanty made where he stretched the ball at the end, that was fantastic. But there was about 5 or 6 missed tackles. And I agree, Washington State is a good team. They need to find a way to get a better running game themselves, even though they're trying, because your quarterback, for the most part, in my opinion, and I know it's a new era of football, shouldn't be the guy that carries the ball the most, even though John Mateer is a good ball carrier. I think he had 20 carries, and I don't know if the next guy had double digits. So those two things, and then protection. Boise State really confused them or brought some stuff that they couldn't pick up. I don't know, but sacks is way too many to give up. And that was a big difference in the game.
Yeah, I agree with you, Coach. The Boise State defensive line created a ton of pressure and got Washington State out of sorts. But Coach, when I think when Washington State looks back at this film, I remember one of my great coaches, Gunther Cunningham, rest in peace. When I was with the Detroit Lions, we would play against the Minnesota Vikings and Adrian Peterson, and he would come up to the board after the game and say, 22 carries for 52 yards. That was a great performance. And then he would put down 5 carries for 110 yards. He's like, if we could just get rid of these 5 carries for these explosives, that's when you have a good defense. And that's what it looked like for Washington State. A lot of times they had Ashton Jeanty bottled up, but then it was those few missed tackles that led to big plays for Boise State that Washington State has got to try to eliminate in order to move forward.
Yeah, unfortunately, those carries do count, and I look at that too. As a D coordinator, we used to look at that too, but the bottom line is good backs. And we played Adrian Peterson about 3 or 4 times at Oregon. He was an absolute beast. I mean, he just was a good-looking guy, big, strong, can run. But we're not talking about an Adrian Peterson, but Jeanty is that kind of back. I still like Washington State. I think they're a good football team. I looked at their schedule ahead. I don't have it memorized who they play, but there's not a game on that schedule that I think that they're not favorite moving forward. So they could still have a very, very strong season.
Yeah, absolutely. And coaches is, obviously that week 5 just ended. Washington State does have a bye, and that schedule is favorable. They have at Fresno State, they play against Hawaii, San Diego State, Utah State, New Mexico, Oregon State, and end the season at Wyoming. Definitely a lot of games. If Washington State handles their business, they can run the gamut and be in a great position at the end of this year. But Coach, going into the bye for Washington State, what are some things that you always looked at as a coach of what was your approach going into the bye week? Was it getting healthy? Was it self-scout? What were some of the emphasis?
Well, you hit 2 of them. Obviously, guys that were nicked up, try to get them healthy. But then self-scout, go back and see what you've done well, what you've done not so well, what you need to fix, what you need to tweak, what's hurting you, what plays have been hurting you. Is there continuous play that's giving you a problem? Those kinds of things. Now, I think defensively, tackling, you got to go back. They have to have some great tackling drills, and it's hard to do in today's game. You don't want to get guys hurt, but some great tackling. And then pass protection really, really jumped out at me in this game versus Boise. So those are 2 areas.
Okay. Well, listen, that was Washington State. They have a lot to look forward to if you're a Coug fan. A lot of promising play out there on the field. We're going to work for Washington State and take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about those Oregon State Beavs. They had a bye week this week, but we'll talk about their upcoming schedule. Hang on with us. We'll be right back on Pac-12 After Dark. Welcome back to Pac-12 After Dark. Coach Nick Aliotti and I just got done talking about Washington State and their loss to Boise State. Now we're going to talk about the other team in the pack, Oregon State. Had a bye week this past weekend. And Coach, having that bye week, what are some of the things that you think was able to accomplish going into the bye? Was it rest? Was it, game plan moving forward? What was Oregon State focus on?
Oregon State has looked pretty good other than the one game against Oregon. They continue to stick with their recipe of a ball control offense, shorten the game, and then play pretty good defense. I mean, and for the most part, I think Purdue in their last game rushed the ball for more yards than you would like, but they held them to about 52 yards passing or something like that. I think Oregon State, in my opinion, still has a lot of good things ahead of them. They're a good football team. The one thing that I think that I have a problem with is explosion plays, meaning this, they need to have more of them. And they need to find a way to have a overall better passing game down the field, because I'm truly a believer in it's hard for a football team to have 75 yards to drive the field without making a mistake without having an explosion play on offense, it's hard to score touchdowns. So they need to work on, and I'm sure they are, explosion plays, particularly throwing the ball down the field.
Yeah, Coach, I agree with you on that. And I think that this bye week comes in a great time for Oregon State, where they can sit back, self-evaluate what they've done moving forward. They've relied a lot on their run game, almost exclusively on the run game. Now it's time to get those quarterbacks to take some chances, get some opportunities down the field, and see what they have. You know, they're playing against a Colorado State coming up this next week who, listen, they got beat 52-0 against the number one team of the country in Texas. They got beat up pretty good by Colorado, but they were able to come out victorious against Northern Colorado. So this is a team that Oregon State should beat. They should be able to establish the run. But I do agree with you, Coach. I think that the Beavers have to find a way to put some trust in their quarterbacks, you know, take some shots down the field, see what those receivers can do, and make some plays. And on the defensive side, I thought Purdue ran the ball a little. They ran the ball very efficiently against Oregon State. Get the run game stopped up and get those playmakers on the back end some opportunities to make plays. So, you know, Oregon State, this is a good win for them. I think this is going to be a good opportunity for a win if they come to play at Reser Stadium. All right, well, I got to give another shout out to my man, John Mateer. In a loss, I thought he played well. Did all he could. Washington State fell to Boise State, but they have a bye week. They're going to lick up their wounds, get healthy, and come back in the following week and get back on their winning ways. Oregon State's coming up this week with a game against Colorado State after the bye. Looking forward to seeing them get back to playing great ball. And we'll be with you next week at week 6 as we break down Oregon State versus Colorado State, the rest of the country. Thank you for sticking with us and hanging out at Pac-12 After Dark. For Nick Aliotti, I'm Erik Coleman. Have a great week. Coach, talking about great performances, were there any performances this weekend that stood out? Obviously, we talked about Ashton Genty. I mean, 10 yards a carry. He was phenomenal against Washington State. You talk about Ashton Genty, and then was there anyone else that stood out to you this weekend?
Well, Milroe was fantastic for Alabama in a big game. I thought he was the difference in that whole game. He is a very good runner. As much as we've been bragging about Mateer, Milroe's another one of those quarterbacks that can really run. And then Travis Hunter continues to impress, and obviously Genty. Those three had the best of the games I saw, and I try to watch a lot of them, had the best performances this weekend for me.